Welcome elected members, staff, guests and members of the public to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 26th of March 2025. I declare this meeting opened at 5:30 p.m. The City of Busselton acknowledges the Wardani and Busselton people as the traditional custodians of this region. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. This meeting is being audio recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being live streamed on the City of Busselton YouTube channel. The prayer this evening will be read by Elder Greg Spencer from the Busselton Christian Brethren Assembly. Thank you. Yeah, just press the button there. And just press it once, it'll come on. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the privilege. Dear Lord, we just put before you the councillors. Thank you for their willingness to serve our community, for the staff here as well. And Lord, we just pray that you would grant wisdom and discernment as the issues that are discussed tonight have decisions made around them. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much for that, and you're welcome to stay if you wish. But, otherwise, thank you. In attendance tonight, we have Councillors Ryan, Lee, Caig, McNeish, Love, Cox and Kennedy, and online, I believe we have Councillor Beecroft. Can you hear us, Councillor Beecroft?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Can we see Councillor Beecroft?
Should be able to.
Thank you. I have no approved leave of absence. Just as announcements, I wanted to say that this Sunday I will be attending Joan Harlow's 106th birthday. So a lovely lady who's in Busselton, and I think I've been attending her birthday since she was 99. So it's a little special day for her, so I thought I'd say happy birthday to her. So we have one item, disclosure of interest, which is item 12.1, which is Councillor McNeish with an impartiality interest on the, that's the Springfield item. Disclosure will be read out at that time. Question time for public. We have two questions that were taken on notice on the 12th of March 2025. And these responses are now displayed on the screen and will be recorded in the minutes of this meeting. I now move on to public question time, where the members of the public have the opportunity to ask a question of council about matters relevant to the city. And I will take the opportunity to remind everyone that the public question time is conducted in accordance with the council meetings, information sessions and decision-making processes, policy and the city's standing orders. Just a reminder that it is a question time. I will allow a very small preamble, but it's not an opportunity for members of the public to make statements. We have received two bookings tonight. The first one is from John Forrest, who has not provided a question, but if you'd like to come forward and ask your question of council. Thank you.
Afternoon, councillors, Mayor, Tony, everybody else here, visitors to the chamber. My first question is, can the City of Busselton inform ratepayers of the total cost incurred in pursuing myself, Mr Forrest, in a failed prosecution, both for the first instance and the appeal? I think this question has been asked a few times before, not by myself, and look, I can tell you right now it's over $500,000, so sure. That's
Thank
just
you.
a good starting point.
Sorry, Mr Forrest, I should have said, could you just state your name and where you're from as well? Just
My name is John Forrest and I'm from Ludlow.
Okay, thank you. So your question was...
The question was how much was spent by the city pursuing me in a failed legal prosecution both in the first instance and the appeal, and I'm suggesting that my costs were about $200,000, and from what I can understand, the city's costs are about 250.
Sure.
So by the time I get my costs returned back to me, the city will be able to pocket about $500,000. So just for a bit of reference for you.
Is
My second question is to councillors.
Just see if there is a response to this question?
Yeah, I'd like a response.
I can advise in terms of the city's legal costs in relation to that particular prosecution and the appeal. They total $44,000 for the city's legal costs.
44,000.
44,000.
Yeah, that's for the city's legal
It's
costs.
interesting. Okay.
Thank you. And your second question, Mr. Forrest?
So 44,000?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I'll tell Tim that. He'll be interested to hear that. My second question is, so were the councillors informed of the intention to commence legal prosecution against myself, and at which stage were they advised?
Yes, as per our compliance and enforcement policy, councillors were informed that the city would be commencing compliance action.
Criminal prosecution?
Yep.
Okay. My third question is, in June of 2023, City of Busselton staff wrote to my customers telling them that my development approval wasn't valid, and which caused a lot of expensive trouble. Now, I don't know if the councillors are aware of this or not, but why would City of Busselton staff write to my customers, not to me, but to my customers, telling them my development approval wasn't valid, and we had to cease supplying my customers? I mean, customers were almost civil.
I'm just going to, sorry, just stop you.
Yeah, I think we need to take that one on notice because that's something I don't have at hand.
Yeah,
But this question's this is not the first time this has been asked, and I've never got a response. So I thought I'd come here and ask myself.
No, I appreciate the asking question.
Well, that's good, Phil.
I don't want to go into accusations that may or may not be true.
Oh, not accusations, it's fact.
But yeah,
No,
so
no
the question
accusations,
will
Phil,
be,
it's a fact.
the question
It's a
will
fact.
be responded to you.
And
Mr.
I'm
Forrest.
going to supply all the emails to the Busselton newspaper tomorrow
Sure.
to support this, because this is something that's probably going
Sorry,
to...
I'm not going to allow statements, as I said, but thank you for your
But
questions.
Phil, you need to listen.
Yeah, no,
Because listen
Mr.
to me.
Forrest,
Phil,
I will meet with you
Phil,
afterwards. I
listen.
will meet.
No, listen, Phil, you need to listen.
It's Mr. Mayor, and I'm sorry. No. Okay.
I don't
No,
accept-
I'm not going to be pushed on this one. I've said it's not about my statement. I will meet with you. I'm more than happy to meet with you after this council meeting, and I'll have a chat.
I'll meet tomorrow, Phil.
Okay? Well,
Okay.
well, I'll check my diary. I know I'm pretty busy for the next 2 days, and I
Aren't
mean
we all?
that, and I'm happy to share my diary with
I'm
you.
fed up with this, Phil, because this has been going for 2 years.
This is the first
no
time you've
answer.
contacted me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forrest. It is the first time you've mentioned this to me. Thank you.
Maybe
The first time I've met you.
Phil, this is...
No, thank you.
This is dysfunctional,
Cheers.
Phil. I think I'll...
No, it's, thank you, Mr. Forrest, appreciate, and I will speak to you afterwards.
We'll see.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further, next we have a question from Mr. Fabrizio Goria. Fabrizio, oh. You can come up, Laura, Mariah, and read it if you wish.
I don't actually have it here in front of me, but I think I remember it. Can everyone hear me? Good evening. Nice to meet you, John Forrest. The question is, has the City of Busselton advertised the decision from the council, the resolution from the council to what was it again? Develop a new scheme.
Yeah, I've
And
actually got
when?
the question here. If you
Oh, well,
wish me
there
to
you
read it. It said, I noticed that in today's newspaper, there is a notice regarding the progress of the local planning scheme 22. Can you please advise prior to today where and when the city has advertised the resolution to draft a new scheme? The response is the resolution to prepare a new scheme was council agenda item on the 19th of April 2023, council decision number C2304/065. The public notice of this resolution appeared in the Beta Bay notice in the local newspaper on the 12th of May 23, together with a notice on the city website at this same time.
12th of May 23,
Yep, that is correct.
and the Bay to Bay.
Beta Bay newsletter and on the city's website.
Can you tell me which Bay to Bay newsletter it was?
I'm assuming it would have been around that month, the May one potentially, but I will have to take that on notice if you wish, but,
So am
so
I
April one, would it, maybe?
am I
Yeah.
okay to assume that it wasn't put on the Facebook page or the City of Busselton's news on their actual?
That's, yeah, we'd have to
Seeing
check
as-
that, but this is the answer I have in front of me, so.
Seeing as you haven't said that, I assume it hasn't been, and I've checked, so I
Yeah,
didn't
I
see
would
it.
assume it's not there.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. Are there any further questions from the public? Mr. Sims, if you'd like to come forward, state your name and where you're from.
Keith Sims, Busselton. Good evening, councillors, mayor and everyone else. So my two questions about the salt water. In the BD Mail on the 19th of March, the city advised that it would be advertising the saltwater business plan. That had not been done previously. It also stated that the council's commitment to full transparency. That has not actually been the case with the saltwater project. Transparency I'm referring to. It says the city will prepare and advertise to the community in accordance with section 3.59 of the Local Government Act a formal business plan later in 2025. Question one, why so late in the year when you already have 6 business cases to choose from and a 7th one on its way, I believe?
Thank you. I'll give that to Mr. the CEO.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Sims. So just basically from getting to actually getting the business case put together and put out there. So the original advertising was to advise that it will be coming. So it's coming, and then once it's prepared, we'll get that out there in accordance with section 3.59. So you'll see in the response we gave that we sought legal advice and then a second opinion, and then that actually changed the course of events. So that's why it's going through that way. So as soon as possible, we'll get that to the public.
Yeah, I understand the misunderstanding or misinformation originally, so I'm not, that's not my
Sorry,
query.
not misinformation. It was just more the legal opinion set us on
Yeah,
a different
okay,
course.
the difference of
so
opinion.
now that we know that, we'll get that prepared. We'll get that out to the
Yeah,
public.
as I said, I'm not disputing about why it wasn't done. All I'm saying is, why are you writing a new one? You already have 6 of them. And that delays.
We have to write a business plan in accordance with section 3.59.
Thank you.
But,
That's the answer to the question.
That's the answer. Sorry, Mr. Sims. I'm not going to get into debate again.
okay. In the commitment to transparency, will the city, for example, include the whole process going from a $21 million, so this is to do with the business case that you are writing now, or going to write now. Will the city, for example, include the whole process going from a $21 million project with a 10.35 federal funding being almost 50% of the cost? This is a series of things. A critical assumption of obtaining a state government $9.5 million grant or possibly not being able to proceed, which is the same request from the previous mayor to Minister McTiernan and never obtained. Adding a convention centre that increased the cost by 50%.
Can I ask what the question is, please, Mr. Sims? I'm trying to be fair.
Will the city include in the whole process of this new business case, include the things that I'm stating? So I haven't quite finished what I'm stating.
If
Adding a convention centre that increased the cost by 50%, a $38 million fixed price building contract being a $44.5 million project cost that has increased to 51.5. The total grant amount is 15.2 or 3, I'm not 100% sure, but it's one of those.
Can I ask you to phrase the question then, because there's a lot of information in here, and it's going to be difficult to answer directly. If
I'm happy for you.
you could maybe send this question in, that would
I
definitely
will.
help. But yeah,
I
sure. All right. So
will send it to you.
it's
But you don't mean as a question on
Mr
notice?
Sims, I suppose a lot of that information I already have and the city already has, so I appreciate the stats behind it all. I think the question around will we be, as part of the business case, be including all of that information? Not necessarily in the business case, some of it obviously will be, and where we can, we will, but a lot of that information is already available in the history of the project. You'll see on the website as well, which the council endorsed recently as well, where they looked at the history of the project and actually outlines a lot of those things. So yes, the information's there. As part of the business case, it will focus on the business case in accordance with the Act.
Okay. I can't see that all that information is there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Sims. Sorry. Are there any other questions of the public? Ms Shackleton, if you'd like to come forward. For the record, give your name and where you're from. Sorry, just the microphone needs to be switched on. Thank you.
Michelle Shackleton of Abbey. First question was to do with the asking what the financial impact is in terms of the savings and expenditure as a result of the saltwater not opening, because obviously you've got money put aside in the budget, you're not spending it, but also it must have cost you some money to cancel some of those events that you have listed.
Mr Seah?
I might need some more detail about what you're asking. If you could clarify sort of the period, if you're talking about now until when, now until
This
potential opening date.
This
until
financial period.
This financial year. Look, I'll have to get back to you on that because we'll have to
you.
look at the information, so happy to take that on notice.
That would be lovely, thank you. I noticed that you've got a chatbot that you're paying $500 odd a period for that's supposed to operate on the website. I keep asking it questions and it keeps referring me back to ring the office. So is there anything it does know?
That's the question. Is there anything that...
I've asked the chatbot that and it said, no, I had to ring the office. No, there's nothing, it won't find
I don't
anything.
know if I can answer for a chatbot, I'm afraid, Ms Shackleton.
Yeah, that's a bit of an open question, that one. Thank you.
At the moment, it's only finding one thing when you ask for salt water and absolutely nothing for BPAC.
So your question is?
I've asked my question, that was just a statement. The last question is to do with the funding agreement with the federal government. Originally, the information we got from Naomi Searle, who was what was she at the time? Director of that department?
Commercial services.
Thank you. She advised that the following scope was required for that funding agreement with the federal government, and three of the things that I'd like some information on, please, whether we have met those conditions. Is there was supposed to be seating to accommodate at least 600 patrons, one male, one female and one ambulant toilet room with a number of stalls required to cater for at least 600 patrons, and 2 firewater tanks. Have we got those things in the building?
Through the chair, my understanding is yes, but I'll double check that for you, certainly on the numbers of being able to handle people and the toilet situation. I'm not sure about, what was the last one, sorry, Ms Shackleton?
2 firewater tanks.
2 firewater tanks. I'll have to check on that one for you, Ms Shackleton, and get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Was that 3?
No, it's 3.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Mr Glover, if you'd like to come forward. State your name and where you're from. Thank you. Your question
Good evening. My
is-
name's Darren Glover from Ambergate. Just one question. Are all decisions made by the City of Busselton made with adherence to the Local Government Act?
Is there a specific decision you're referring to, Mr Glover, or just all decisions in general? Because the answer to that would be no, because some decisions are made under other areas of legislation,
Okay.
not just the Local Government Act.
So are there actually decisions made under legislation or under policy?
There's some under legislation, policy and delegation.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any further questions from the public? If not, Mariah. It's the gap. It's always the gap. If you state your name and where you're from, please.
It's Mariah Guerrier and I'm from Chapman Hill. I just have a couple questions, maybe three. Can someone please provide to me a reason why the city is not reviewing the planning strategy to ensure that it's satisfactory in its existing form to guide the new scheme?
Mr. Barber, did you understand that? Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor. The strategy went through a process. It's adopted by, it was endorsed by the council, adopted by the WAPC, and now that strategy is we're required to adhere to in the preparation of a new scheme. Once a new scheme is in place, then we would start the review of the next strategy.
The reason I asked the question...
Next question.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question leads to my next question. So on the 20th of March, I went to the Busselton Naturist Club and Warren Giddens was there doing a presentation, and he said that we would also be doing a new strategy next year. Now, I'm pretty sure the regulation says that when you do a new scheme, you're supposed to make sure that the strategy that you have is current and applicable, and it's just a quick review of the strategy to say, do we keep it, do we get rid of it, do we amend it? And obviously, if we're being told, and I think I was told by other people in the city as well, that we're getting a new strategy, then obviously it's not good enough for the new scheme.
So the
and we're doing
question
it. So if we are assuming that this strategy currently is good enough, why are we doing a new one next year? I was said by Warren.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's a requirement under the regulations to either review or prepare a new strategy at certain points in time. In terms of the scheme, we've been given an instruction from the Minister to prepare a new scheme. So we're going through that process at the moment. It does take time to prepare a new scheme and get it through the process. Once that finishes, it's going to be time to prepare or review the strategy. So we will be undertaking that process.
Isn't it already time to review the strategy? Because it was endorsed at the end of 2019.
The question through
So
the
that's
chair.
the third question, which is it not already time to review the strategy as it was endorsed at the end of 2019? So that means
That's your question.
Yeah, that's my question. Yeah.
We're doing it now. Yeah.
Through Mr. Mayor, the process is we do the strategy, we do the scheme, we look at the next strategy.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
That didn't answer my question anyway.
I would like to just reiterate to the audience that we have here, it'd be great if you could send the questions in advance, because then it would give us some understanding, and also the officers a chance to, if they have any questions, to clarify what things are. That is part of the standing orders that we ask that you do write to us in advance. You have a couple of weeks, or if you have questions, you're welcome to come along to the CAS sessions and talk to council. So that is your options, but otherwise I will be getting a little bit stricter on the preamble. We're already nearly half an hour into this meeting. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Petitions, we have none. Presentations from parties with an interest. We have Larry Guys, Director, Principal Planner from Across Planning. This is on item 12.1, the proposed Springfield Structure Plan. Lot 3965, number 796, Commonage Road, Yallingup. Consideration for final approval. And Mr. Guys, you have 5 minutes to present to council.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I've been the planning consultant for the Springfield Structure Plan, and I represent the proponents. The proponents are from the southwest, and one of the directors is here tonight, Graham Teague, who is a full-time resident of Dunsborough. At 105 hectares, Lot 3965 is one of the few very large land holdings yet to be subdivided for rural residential lots in the commonage. Land zoned rural residential is a scarce resource that should be used wisely. With no new rural residential areas permitted by the WAPC, the city's local planning strategy provides for rural residential consolidation in Dunbarton and the commonage. To quote, This will contribute to the efficient use of land, services and infrastructure and will maximise the number of rural residential lots without needing to alienate additional areas of rural land. WAPC policy and the city's existing Local Planning Scheme 21 provide for a minimum lot size of 1 hectare in the rural residential zone. Springfield Structure Plan complies with this by proposing lot sizes from 1 to 9 hectares, averaging 1.48. There are already more than 60 lots of 1 to 1.5 hectares in the vicinity of Springfield, as seen. It has previously been suggested that the smallest of the proposed lots, 1 hectare, are better suited to an urban subdivision. This simple illustration compares 450, 900 and 10,000 square metre, that's 1 hectare, lots. The 450 square metre lot is common to current residential estates such as Embark, Vass and Dunsborough Lakes. The 900 square metre lot is closer to the old quarter-acre block, rare these days and regarded as a big block in an urban context. In comparison, the 1 hectare lot shows that even with a larger house and a maximum building envelope of 2,000 square metres, the overall lot is much larger than in an urban context, hence suited to a rural residential zone. Careful consideration has been given to environmental impact and management, including remnant vegetation protection. As a result, 15 hectares, that's 97% of existing remnant vegetation will be retained. The estimated number of existing potential habitat trees is 618. Of these, the maximum number that may be removed, 36, is very small and it could well be less at subdivision stage. Importantly, no potential habitat trees with any suitable hollows for black cockatoos will be removed. The number of native trees to be planted is 1,100 to 1,500. The final number will be negotiated with the city at the subdivision stage. As a result, the ratio of trees planted for each tree removed will be between 30 to 1 and 40 to 1. Of these, the Marri and Jarrah plantings will increase black cockatoo habitat by some 180%. A visual impact assessment was prepared that minimises visual impacts on neighbours and passing traffic. The visual assessment includes realistic photo montages of development on each lot, firstly without mitigation measures, and secondly with landscape planting in place. Viewpoint 1 is from the Commonage Road entry intersection. The top image shows the completed development without mitigation measures. The bottom image shows retention of the existing trees plus landscape planting within the 20-metre buffer. Viewpoint 2 is further north along Commonage Road. Note the 100-metre setback to the nearest building envelope. At the subdivision stage, negotiations will occur with the city and neighbours about the preferred density of landscape planting, full screening or partial screening with filtered views. Viewpoint 3 is from the northern boundary near Moriarty Place. Note the existing mature eucalypt buffer in the foreground. New landscape planting will achieve full screening or filtered views after consultation with neighbours. Viewpoints 4 and 5 similarly illustrate how new landscape planting will achieve full screening or filtered views. The revised structure plan, figure 1, reflects the officer recommendations. Finishing
Sure,
now.
thank you.
It provides community benefit through appropriate environmental and landscape management and significantly improved bushfire protection for residents in the locality. In conclusion, the proponents support the officer recommendation, including the schedule of modifications. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay, I'll now move on to, sorry, thank you. No questions. Move on to item 8.1, that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 12th of March 2025 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Love, seconded Councillor Lee. Is there any opposition? I can't see councillor Beecroft, sorry. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried unanimously 9-0. I now moved on to item 10, which is adoption by exception resolution en bloc. The recommendation that the committee recommendations for item 11.1, 11.2 and the officer recommendations for items 14.1, 15.1 and 16.1 be adopted en bloc. Do I have a mover? I moved Councillor Love. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Craig. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously 9-0. Thank you. Items to be dealt with on separate resolution. We have item 15.2, which is the 2024-25 mid-year budget review, requiring an absolute majority. Do I have a mover for the motion? Moved Councillor Kennedy, seconded Councillor Cox. Is there any opposition? There being opposition, Councillor Kennedy, do you wish to put your motion?
I'll move as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Speak to your motion. Sorry, I'll speak to the officer's recommendation or the motion. So, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion? No. Thank you. Councillor Cox, do you wish to?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Speaker against? Councillor Anne Ryan, if you'd like to speak.
I actually have no opposition to the officer's recommendation, but would like to move an amendment, if I may. I'd like to move an amendment that is, with point 2, the council, with respect to the comments on page 61, which states inflationary factors, particularly in the energy sector, driven by adverse global conditions such as the continuing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, have continued to have significant impact, making forecasting very difficult, acknowledges that it shall not be in any way read that the council endorses or supports or agrees with the comment.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Lee. Is there any opposition? There is opposition. You may speak to your motion.
Councillors, our reports are meant to represent the facts. And as discussed today, the staff are of the opinion that the war in Ukraine and the Middle East are affecting prices. However, if you're completing a test or a uni exam without any evidence of what you are writing, you should probably fail that exam without putting any evidence of citations or references. Simply referencing the Ukraine war as a driver of WA energy prices is misleading, inappropriate and based purely on an opinion, not fact. WA's energy costs are shaped by local market mechanisms and transition decisions, not global conflicts. While global conflicts such as those in Ukraine and Middle East have influenced international energy markets, their direct impact on Western Australia is minimal. This morning I sent you a document with the information and references. You can do your homework too on this, but put bluntly, I don't agree with the comments that the staff have written. WA operates an independent energy system with its own wholesale electricity market and domestic gas reservation policy that insulates it from global LNG prices. The real drivers of energy price pressures in WA are local, with increased industrial demand, limited supply competition, inflation index gas contracts, and the cost of onboarding new infrastructure, particularly renewable energy assets requiring grid upgrades. Additional costs have arisen from the Network Control Essential System Services mechanism introduced to stabilise the grid during the transition from coal to renewables. Reserve capacity payments are also adding to energy bills as generators are paid to be available even when not producing. The planned closure of Muja Power Station has further tightened supply, especially as new large-scale renewables and firming infrastructure like batteries and peaking gas are not yet fully online and will further increase energy costs. While the state government's political agenda strongly favours a rapid transition to renewables, some of the resulting costs, including accelerated coal closures, investment risk premiums, subsidies and transmission expansion, are being passed through to consumers. This reinforces the need for transparent, staged energy policy that balances climate goals with affordability and reliability. In this context, it is inaccurate to attribute WA's energy pricing challenges to overseas conflicts. They are largely a result of the planned policy decisions, market design choices, and the pace and structure of the energy transition within WA itself. I won't bang on about all the other items that I raised in that document, but I simply want to raise with the council that opinions are not fact, and I think I've demonstrated the fact in this document with all its citations and references, and would urge you to vote for this motion, which is not negating from the original officer's recommendation, just adding some meat to the bones. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Lee, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, and I'll keep it brief. Thank you, Councillor Ryan, for your efforts in addressing that comment. I wonder if it might have just been a little easier if the comments regarding the conflicts in Ukraine and Middle East might have just been left out, and then it wouldn't have caused the controversy. But I support Councillor Ryan's amendment because it doesn't detract from what the officer comment is and the recommendation is, and it just seeks clarification. So that's why I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Do I have opposition? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll rise to speak against this because I do agree with the officers that with respect to the comments made, even though we are geopolitically distant from global conflict, our region's energy pricing is still influenced by global trends. The fact that Councillor Ryan says it's based on opinion, not fact, I think these days when you look to write any kind of argument, you can use AI or you can use Google, and you can find any kind of supporting documents to support any argument that you wish to bring forward. So whilst in some people's perspective it might be fact, and then I could absolutely look at the opposite opinion and find fact to support that as well. So therefore I think it's a very fine line to say that it's a particular point of view, and you take your point of view and you can find all the kinds of citations and facts to support that. I think it's a pretty commonly held fact that global conflict has an effect even in WA. Now, to what degree that it has an effect, it may be open to interpretation. However, I believe that the officers have included the statement, and it just says such as. It's not saying that's the only cause of inflationary factors. It's just one of the causes, and I would agree with that opinion. All the reading I've done from leading economists since the Ukraine war started indicates, and any other global conflicts, indicates that we are still susceptible to effects, and it might not be a direct effect, but there's certainly indirect effects that cause inflationary factors even here in WA. So therefore, I do not agree. I agree with the officer's statement, and I don't agree with the alternate recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Is there a speaker for? Councillor McNeish.
Thank you, sir. Just briefly, I think it's a very interesting issue. It's a governance issue that we probably need to explore in future. We rely on the advice provided in the reports, which are the professional advice and, well, basically the opinion of the collective of officers as authorised by the CEO under his signature when the agenda goes out. Now the Local Government Act talks about evidence, to base decisions on evidence, and that's new. So we can only discern, is an opinion sufficient evidence, or if the opinion was supposedly factual, and I take Councillor Cox's point, I think the healthy thing would be where such an opinion is ventured, that it be referenced, and the reference can then be challenged. But that would supply some indication of what evidence has been used to form that opinion. So I think whilst the alternative doesn't detract from the recommendation of the officers, it's probably just a healthy thing to note as is being proposed, and we can discuss this in future. Thank you.
Speaker against? Speaker for? Right of reply.
Thank you, Councillor McNish. Your comments are succinct and quite right. We will all have differences of opinion. And this is the second time that this comment has been used in a report. And I just don't agree with the opinion of whoever wrote the report. And my
This is your rebuttal, just to say.
information is that it is just that. It is an opinion which can be argued. And I'm basically saying that councillors should be aware that it is an opinion that can be argued, that is not, hasn't been cited or referenced. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, I put this amendment to the vote. All those in favour? So that's Councillor Ryan, Councillor Lee, Councillor Cagg, Councillor McNish, Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Beecroft, and those against, Councillor Love, Cox and the Mayor, Phil Cronin. Thank you. I will now return to the substantive with the amendment. Is there a speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Cox, you reserved your right.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
And Councillor Kennedy, your rebuttal?
Nothing further to add.
Sure, okay. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried 8-0 with Councillor Cox voting against. 8-1, sorry, 8-1. Thank you. We now move on to items for debate. Item number 12.1 is the proposed Springfield Structure Plan, Lot 3965, number 796, Commonage Road, Yallingup. Consideration final approval. This was pulled by Councillor Kennedy, and the alternate should be in front of you very shortly. These items were sent out to you last night. Councillor Kennedy, do you wish to put your motion?
Yes, I'll move it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor McNish. Councillor Kennedy, do you wish to? Sorry, yeah. Is there any opposition? There is opposition. Therefore, Councillor Kennedy, speak to your motion.
Yes, so I would like the consent of the seconder to amend this motion just to add some more specifics to the approximate 2 hectares. So I'll be seeking Well, yes, that's the amendment on the screen, which elaborates on.
If I can just give councillors time to read that, if that's all right.
Am I able to ask a question through the chair on this amendment?
You may
this
ask a question
alternative.
of clarification.
Yeah, question of clarification. It's probably to Director Barber. I was of the belief that we weren't allowed to get too into the details or administrational kind of side of things of the design layout of a applicants or proponents subdivision proposals, and I do just have concerns over the actual requirements put in the dot pointing of how to amalgamate the lots to be able to get that average 2 hectare lot size, and I was just wanting your professional opinion on if we were as a council to direct a proponent in such detail, what if there is any risks and what those risks could be.
Through you, Mr Mayor. There's nothing in any legislation that prevents a recommendation being specific. I guess in terms of the process, this is a recommendation to the West Australian Planning Commission. As a proposed schedule of modifications, it will be up to them to then determine if that proposed modification is reasonable and the justification for it. But there's nothing preventing a modification being specific.
And sorry, supplementary to that, in your opinion, if they didn't think that this was appropriate, do you believe that they would get rid of just the actual amalgamating portion of this, or potentially, because this is combined with the 2 hectare section, that they could just get rid of the 2 hectare because they don't agree with them, us directing how the amalgamations to take place?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not sure I can answer that. The WAPC is the decision maker. This is a recommendation. They will go through the recommendation of the council and I guess item by item determine if the modifications that are proposed align with the planning framework and the characteristics of the site as to whether it would be a legitimate modification and whether they choose to impose it or not.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this? The consent of the seconder, sorry, I do. Thank you.
I confirm.
Thank you very much. Yep. I did see a nod, but I thought we'd do it on the microphone. Okay, there is opposition. Councillor Kennedy, so we'll, to the amended one. Yep, so you can now speak to this amended, or your foreshadowed.
Thank you, councillors. So the current commonage structure plan will expire, and the current direction from the WAPC is to get those provisions into the new scheme. It doesn't mean that those provisions should cease or fall away. Although we have had a workshop, the draft LPS 22 is yet to go to advertising and consultation. From the 44 public submissions for the Springfield structure plan, approximately 90% are locals that oppose the density of development, and the sentiment still seems to be for lower density to retain the rural residential visual amenity. The Lewin Naturalist Ridge policy statement states that in areas of rural landscape significance, development should protect the rural character of the land. There's also policy statement 3.7 that states in areas of general character, development should protect the rural character and conform with policies and guidelines for travel route corridors. So this motion seeks to be more specific on how to get to the 2 hectares that is more consistent with the commonage, the currently endorsed structure plan. So by amalgamating lots 2 to 10 and lots 51 to 59, we're achieving the policy statements in the Lewin Naturalist Ridge state policy. Also, amalgamating lots 31 and 32 means that because of the southern orientation of the lot, it'll be more favourable to agricultural pursuits. So the current structure, Commonage current structure plans has an average area size of 4 hectares. This would mean 23 lots. If we were to match the adjacent precincts at an average of 3 hectares, we should see 31 lots. And if we were to go to an average of 2 hectares, we would have around 51 lots. Much has changed since the Commonage structure plan, and the intent of the local planning strategy does say to limit further subdivision and consolidate within the existing rural residential area. So it may be acceptable to place 1 hectares within the centre of the development, but the perimeter needs to do better to match the expected density of existing neighbours and travellers along Commonage Road. The report also notes that there's 50 plus 1 hectare lots, roundabouts, within the vicinity, but this should not justify our decision. We do not know what discretion was applied in those instances and what was the average lot sizes in those subdivisions. We do know that if we apply a 1 hectare average, that will impact the visual, environment, amenity of this very important rural residential area. In closing, Council needs to strike a balance between the many endorsed plans and their relevant hierarchies, and the draft scheme is yet to go out to consultation. Generous discretion would see 51 lots, but I feel the community would not be accepting of 60 lots. There's no immediate urgency in this approval, and the applicant has the option to follow the current expectations or wait until the new scheme determines the density of the commonage. Thank you, councillors. I urge you to vote for this one.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak, Councillor? Before you do, are you going to, did you want to disclose an interest?
Oh, what a good idea. Had it right here.
Thank you.
I declare an impartiality interest in 12.1 as I live in the next valley to the north, and although this means I'm very aware of the rural residential type matters raised in the item, some might perceive my input might be biased. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider the item solely on its merits and vote or act accordingly. Sign.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you. Yes, I've seconded, thank you, sir. I've seconded this proposal for a few different reasons. Firstly, to basically support the staff direction that's been professionally assessed. I think in the background with workshopping, they've been challenged and come up with a very innovative, intelligent way forward, and that's been good to see. Well done. I think they've nailed it. We're abiding by this is abiding by the council's position in local planning strategy 19, which talks about the maximising of this precious resource. Maximising. Something that's been forgotten about in the past, but that's the second part of the subdivision, consolidation, and maximising. Okay, which this local subdivision diagram structure plan does. It's a recognition of the supply side of the need to increase some land, make more land available, and in the commonage where we can fit that land on pasture land that's out of sight, then that's exactly where we should put the subdivisions, and not where we need to where it's bushfire compromised, nor knock down any remnant vegetation. As we move forward, this will be borne out in what we do, hopefully in the commonage. This is encouraging to see an elected member, new to the council, taking such an interest in the planning field, which is great, and in putting an alternative to the decision maker, the WAPC. One is the officer's recommendation, which is fine, and I'm pretty happy with that. The this represents another option which targets the use of amenity. Okay, so we've got the local planning strategy talking about maximising, where appropriate, bushfire, environmental, community benefit and amenity. So Councillor Kennedy has chosen to target the visual amenity in certain areas, and he's even specified the blocks, and a lot of them close to commonage. So this is an interesting thing. The WAPC decision maker will see the staff work, comprehensive and well done, and fully compliant with the local planning strategy, but they'll also, if this gets through, see a different position of less lots using the decreased density to bolster the amenity, the targeted amenity in particular areas which have been specified by Councillor Kennedy. So there'll be two forms of information in front of the WAPC, and we shall await its decision. So I commend the approach. Just finally, having due regard to something is not just having regard to something, it's having due regard. Now, the due bit is an outdated commonage consolidated structure plan with thinking that started 25 years ago. So to give it its dues, it's not worth everything that it's portrayed to be, but the underpinning planning work of amenity and environment and public benefit, and now we must add bushfire, because bushfire came in well after the commonage consolidated structure plan. Those things still apply, and we'll be taking those forward, and that's been utilised by the applicant in setting this structure plan. So I think the range between the 60 odd lots and the 52 or whatever is coming out of Councillor Kennedy's will be in front of the WAPC, both with merit, and the decision maker will make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeish. Speaker against? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I commend Councillor Kennedy for attempting to increase the lot size of this subdivision, it clearly doesn't align with the planning framework. It's an arbitrary figure that has been plucked between a 1 hectare lot size, which has been put forward by the proponent, and the Commonage Policy Area Consolidated Structure Plan, the CPA-CSP. It represents a primary overriding document that currently, today, when we're making this decision, covers the whole Commonage rural residential area. It was endorsed by the WAPC in October 2004 to guide more detailed local structure planning. And this is crucial. It doesn't expire for another 6 months. The Commonage Policy Area Consolidated Structure Plan clearly outlines that lots in this area must be a minimum lot size of 2 hectares with an average of 4 hectares. Based on the structure plan's due regard status, decision makers are not legally bound by structure plans, but we have an obligation to use a structure plan in the determination of proposals for subdivision or development. This means considering the plan's purpose and vision, objectives, design, rationale and implementation requirements. In the interest of orderly and proper planning, a decision maker should not set aside a structure plan or key structure plan provisions. We've also heard tonight a bit about the planning strategy. That was drafted in 2016. Some 9 years ago, it was ratified in 2019. One of the aims of the town planning strategy, as Councillor McNish said, is to maximise the number of rural residential lots within the Commonage area. However, and this is vitally important, this should only be considered where due regard has been given to environmental values, landscape and visual amenity, biodiversity values and bushfire risk. It must also demonstrate clear community benefit. The officers have clearly stated in their report, and I quote, the smaller size of the majority of the lots at 1.4 hectares or 2 hectares, as Councillor Kennedy has put forward, that are currently proposed would require the removal of some remnant vegetation, predominantly large trees, to achieve planning setbacks and BHL requirements. Further, lot boundaries that transect significant areas of vegetation may be prone to the construction of fencing, I note, prohibited under the scheme, and the associated unauthorised removal of remnant vegetation. Smaller rural residential lots, i.e. 2 hectares, are more likely to be fenced to demarcate boundaries as they lack the privacy afforded by larger lots. Similarly, the construction of driveways traversing areas of significant remnant vegetation would also result in large amounts of unnecessary clearing. Officers go on to state these impacts would be avoided entirely if the lot sizes specified in the CPA, CSP were adhered to in its current form. And sorry, but what is the community value in offering 3 times more, or 50 as opposed to 66 lots in more rural residential lots? There's no added infrastructure, there's no ovals, there's no schools, there's no affordable housing. It's not adjacent to an established precinct. So what is the community benefit? The proponent did mention tonight that the community benefit was an environmental landscape value and something about bushfire. To me, that is not demonstrating clear community benefit. So to recap, to put the final nail in the coffin, 51 submissions were received with regard to this development. The key issue raised in the submissions was that the proposed lot sizes are too small and that the average lot size is inconsistent with the adopted planning framework. The applicant has made a notable departure in the density of the development when compared to the provisions of the CPA CSP, and they are asking us to ignore the feedback provided by the community and ignore the planning framework documents that have been invoked successfully in this area for over 20 years. Whilst I acknowledge that the CPA CSP will no longer potentially exist after October, today is not the day to ignore a structure plan that has been in place for 21 years. For 21 years, residents have been purchasing property in the commonage area with the understanding that average lot sizes would be between 2 and 4 hectares. Therefore, I will be foreshadowing, if Councillor Kennedy's alternative is not successful, that I will be putting forward my own alternative that asks us to go back and comply with the planning framework and the lot sizes that are specified in the CPA CSP. I would urge all councillors to look at the planning framework that exists today when we are making this decision, not what may or may not exist in 6 months' time. And I would urge you to vote against Councillor Kennedy's alternative, and I will foreshadow my own.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. Speaker 4. Councillor Ryan.
Whilst I initially agreed that the land should be kept at the 3 hectare size, I've since changed my mind. I'm a woman, it's my prerogative. And support for Councillor Kennedy's alternate, which endeavours to come to a solution, is a great solution. Part of the decision, which indeed has changed my attitude, is this document, which, as Mr Barber said tonight, we are required to adhere to. In relation to the draft scheme, that document is very relevant in this decision. 2.3 of LPS 219 states, in accordance with the South West Regional Planning and Infrastructure Framework. Mr Mayor.
Councillors.
In accordance with the South West Regional Planning and Infrastructure Framework, no new rural residential areas are proposed, and the strategy provides the scope to consider limited further subdivision and consolidation within the existing rural areas of the commonage, where there is seen to be a demonstrable community benefit and having regard to environmental, landscape, visual amenity and biodiversity values, as well as bushfire risks. I believe they've been attended to. This will contribute to the more efficient use of land, services and infrastructure and will maximise the number of rural residential lots. Councillors, this document has been in play. They started consultation on this in
Question of clarity.
2016.
Sorry, Councillor Ryan, please take your seat.
Councillor Ryan is showing this document, but she hasn't actually explicitly said what document it is. And from over across the gallery, I actually can't tell
Thank
if it's the local planning scheme or local planning strategy.
Councillor Ryan,
I'm
would you
referring
please
to
explain?
2.3 of the local planning strategy 2.19. Probably worth a read, Councillor Love.
Councillor Ryan, that's not. Councillor Ryan, that's not inappropriate. Sorry.
This document has been in place since 2016 when consultation.
Sorry.
I would like that comment retracted, please, through the Mayor, considering I've read that many and many a times.
No, I won't do that.
Councillor Ryan, please take a seat. Okay. I don't want to hear personal comments made about other councillors in this chamber when it is not being backed up or it is proven to be correct. So I would ask that you retract what you just said to Councillor Love.
Mr Mayor, no. Can I continue?
I will allow you to continue.
Councillors, this
You have
document
2
has
minutes
been in
left.
place since 2016 when consultation began.
Sorry, Councillor Love, please take a seat, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Love, if you wish to make a complaint, you can do if you chose the correct order of the standing orders to which you made your complaint. I could do that, but you didn't. I'm sorry. Councillor Ryan, please continue.
This is what we're working with, and this is the guiding document for our draft local planning scheme, which we're working with now. Councillors, I think it's important to understand what the community have said that they wanted, and I might not like it, and I might want to change it in my involvement in the next draft, should I be here. But right now, this is what we're dealing with, and I urge you to vote for Councillor Kennedy's alternate.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Cagg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be brief because I think enough comments have been made and everyone's well aware of what's going on with regard to this item. I am against, not that I disagree with Councillor Kennedy, but I'm in support of the officer's recommendation, and that is for the modifications proposed and provided attachment 4. I believe the developers in this case have listened. We saw a presentation that showed all the vegetation that is going to be replaced of those 51 trees that will be removed. We saw what the impact would be from the street. I think they put a lot of effort into it. We are in a housing crisis, and while I understand we would all like to keep the larger blocks, I think with the large blocks on the outside and the smaller blocks on the inside is not going to have that visual impact of it being built up. 1 acre or 1 hectare is what a lot of people are chasing. They can't afford bigger blocks. It gives people the opportunity to live in a larger block. So I won't talk any longer because you all will make your own decisions regardless, but in this case I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cagg. Speaker against? So you spoke against, but you're for? Sorry. Speaker for? So Councillor Lee.
Thank you. And I too will be brief, but thank you, Councillor Kennedy, for the work that you've put into this. Your motion speaks logically and pragmatically to the internal portion of development, may suiting the 1 hectare lots, and the peripheral should remain larger. as we heard, rural residential land will be a thing of the past due to decisions by the WAPC, which may be a decision made with future planning in mind, given the increase in population and demands on this finite resource of land. As Councillor Cox mentioned, the CPA, CSP and the DGP are frameworks that have been in place for many, many years, 21 and 23 respectively. Not sure if you know or not, but things have changed fairly significantly since then. So there are going to be new frameworks. We do need to look at accommodating new housing. We need to be innovative, we need to be creative, but more than that, in this chamber, we need to be strategic. We are talking about benefits for the community. That's the community now and the community into the future. So we need to be looking at that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Speaker against? Councillor Cox. Councillor Love.
I want to commend both Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Cox for putting in the time and effort to put in their alternatives, especially Councillor Kennedy. It's not an easy one done, especially going into such specific details. However, I do err on the side of caution with that. And in reference to the local planning strategy scheme, 2019, it does actually say that there is reference of objectives of rural residential areas is to provide lots generally in the range of 1 to 4 hectares, because I have read the scheme many times, especially as we're preparing for the new scheme. And I did just want to highlight to councillors, our role is to be that conduit between administration and officers to the community and being able to be that input for the community, because at the end of the day, officers give us their professional advice, but the community is not always going to agree with that, and it's not always going to align with the community's perceptions and views. That is why we have the role of the council. And so I am highly cautious of the fact that we have, as councillors have noticed, the Commonage Consolidated Structure Plan is over 20 years old. It's coming up to the expiry in October, and we are still in the middle of the process of endorsing our local planning scheme. So why are we bypassing all of the community consultation that informs these structure plans and our local planning schemes, and just saying, hey, yep, all right, 1 hectare, 2 hectare, that's okay because we think it's okay, the officers have given us our professional advice. Community consultation 20 years ago says that that's actually not okay. They want to be, I think it was, minimum 2 hectares, average of 4 hectares, just roughly wrote down some figures from the schemes and structure plans. So I do hold concerns that we haven't gone through that process of engaging and consulting with that community and the wider community at that. So we should be actually sticking and giving due regard to the planning documentations, policies and structure plans that are in place that have not expired, because they have gone through the due regard process of consulting with our community and making sure that that actually aligns with what our community wants. If in future they say, hey, no, actually we would love to have 1 hectare lots in rural residential, let's drop it down, increase the density and all that, we can always look at that later on. I know it wouldn't be ideal for potentially this proponent and that, but if we're doing it as not in this alternative, but what Councillor Cox has in her alternative as 3 hectare lots, averaging at 3 hectare lots, then at least there is that ability in future, if the people have built their houses in appropriate locations and actually future-proofed and thought of this, they could always subdivide their properties down into 1 hectare lots if in future we decide that that is the appropriate size and density for these areas. However, until we've done that consultation and actually engaged with our community. I think it's a bit inappropriate for us to go down to 1 hectare, or as in Councillor Kennedy's alternative, into 2 hectare lots. And that's why I would urge all councillors to vote against this and actually vote in support of Councillor Cox's alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Love. Speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Manish, you've already spoken. You have your rebuttal. Right to reply to what's been said. Thank you,
Yes,
Councillor
no
Kennedy.
Thank you, councillors, for all of the praise out there. I too have concerns of when density will stop. You know, at the moment, do we head to 1 hectare and then do we further go? So, yeah, that's why I think it's important to look at what's endorsed in front of us and make a decision with all of that planning framework. So the Commonage, it's a big one, Policy Area Consolidated Structure Plan is a due regard document, and we can apply discretion there. The proponent's done very well in remaining 97% of vegetation, and this amendment just focuses on increasing that visual amenity. I believe, you know, we could do a bit extra there because we have that desire in the community to not go too dense. So, I mean, I'm just adding another point in there that can make this structure plan as best as it can, because, you know, this is within an extraordinary landscape of the Lewin Naturalist Ridge. And yes, council will need to make the tough decisions sometimes as we don't get all of the consultation out there, but I feel like we have a lot of information and we can make this call tonight. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour? And that's myself, the Mayor, Councillor Anne Ryan, Councillor Lee, Councillor Craig, Councillor McNeish, and Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Beecroft at 4. All those against? Councillor Love and Councillor Cox. Therefore, the motion is carried 7-2. Right, next item. Item 12.2 has been pulled by Councillor Kate Cox. Proposed Biddle Road Structure Plan, Lot 58, Biddle Road, Quidgenup. The alternate recommendation is in front of you. Councillor Cox, do you wish to move your motion? Put your motion.
I'll move as written. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, do I have a seconder? There is a seconder, Councillor Love. Councillor, is there opposition? There is opposition, therefore, Councillor Cox, if you wish to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reasons for this alternative are similar to the reasons in the previous item. It's interesting, actually, because I sit on the development assessment panel. And on the development assessment panel, we're always looking for due regard documents to assist us in our decision making, because they provide detail. You have your high-level legislative documents, and then you have your due regard documents, which just provide that that high level of information when you're looking to make a decision. It seems to me in this case and in this chamber we are picking and choosing when we regard or disregard these documents. Again, with Biddle Road, the minimum lot size does not comply with the Commonage Policy Area Consolidated Structure Plan. And it is a due regard document. And there has been a lot said tonight about, it's outdated, it needs to be reviewed. And we are actually going through that process with our draft town planning scheme. We are taking that to the community to let the community decide, do they want rural residential areas to be consolidated, or are they happy with having lots of 2 and 3 hectares? I acknowledge there are a few 1 hectare lots. They are very sporadically located throughout the commonage area. You don't see large parcels of 1 hectare lots all together, like this proposal. 13 lots I think is reasonable for this location. And again, I'm going to stick to the planning framework when I'm making this decision. The local town planning scheme, as we've heard already tonight, the objectives of the local town planning scheme 21 is to provide generally for lots in rural residential areas in the range of 1 to 4 hectares. We have discretion between 1 and 4 hectares. And this applies to all rural residential areas throughout the whole city, not just the commonage area. But then we have the commonage area, and sitting on top of the scheme, we have informing documents like development guide plans and structure plans. And as we've heard tonight, the commonage structure plan has been in place for 20 years, and people have been buying land in that area for 20 years with the idea that that is how it was going to go. Now, does it need to change? Potentially it does, but I'm not going to sit here in this chamber tonight and make that decision without the community informing me of which direction they want to go in. Now, we've seen with this application on Biddle Road, 31 submissions, and most of those, again, commenting about their concern over the small size of the lots. Again, we'll mention the strategy. The strategy still you have to still use the strategy and read the strategy where due regard has been given to environmental values, landscape, visual amenity, all the rest of it, and community benefit. Again, what is the community benefit here? I get it when you look at a large subdivision and you're putting in ovals and public open space and footpaths and connectivity to town centre precincts. I don't see what the community benefit is here. Expensive lots, they're not affordable. It's going to take years to build on them. There's no builders available to build on them. I think it's just developers trying to capitalise. Yes, rural residential land is limited, so they're trying to capitalise on it. But they're doing it, in my opinion, they are doing it at a time where we have not had time to consult the wider community. And I do not feel comfortable making a decision about consolidating rural residential land without hearing from the wider community. I've heard from 31 people here who don't like the idea of it, but I want to hear from the wider commonage community. And that will happen through the draft town planning scheme. So I would acknowledge councillors to support my alternative in accordance with the planning framework that exists tonight when we are making this decision. And then in the future, if the appetite of the community is to go and consolidate the lots down to 1 hectare lots, we can do that through the scheme process. But I, for one, will be listening to the community on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Love, do you wish to speak?
I'll keep my comments very brief just because I am reiterating what Councillor Cox says. It's very disheartening that it appears that some councillors don't have the appetite to want to genuinely engage with our community and consult with them, especially the community where they are going to be living side by side with this. We know that these documents that we're referring to, the Commonage Consolidated Structure Plan, is outdated, needs to be reviewed. We know that we're in the process of doing our local planning scheme and that we have not even reached the consultation bit of our local planning scheme. We're waiting for that to get to the minister to then go out to the public and consult with. I don't know why it is so hard to get it across to other councillors that we should be waiting to, before we go down from the minimum lot sites from page 12 saying to provide for lots primarily for residential purposes, generally in the range of 1 hectare to 4 hectares, why we're going to the minimum of this when the Commonage Consolidated Structure Plan does not go to that 1 hectare minimum. We have not consulted with the community. Why are we just jumping the gun?
where they're saying minimum consultation has been occurred. No consultation has occurred as of this point, other than from the 2016 when we did our local planning strategy, which was endorsed in 2019. No consultation has been done in this regard, other than when this development application went out and we've received the submissions. And the submissions overwhelmingly say that they do not support us going down to 1 hectare lots. That is all that I'll be saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Councillor Love. Do I have a speaker against? Councillor McNeish.
Thank you, sir. I speak against the proposed alternative because of a number of factors. I said before, due regard means relevant factors are considered in having due regard. And the relevancy of the factors of the outdated Commonage Consolidated Structure Plan that the planning thinking initiated 25 years ago, that is now, that there's a whole heap of that minimum lot size stuff that is now, times have changed, as Councillor Lee has noted, and the community, the broader community, are looking for more available land everywhere, not only in the Commonage, so just not only the Commonage, but Abbey and Vass and Downsborough, all of our settlement nodes have to provide a little bit more to accommodate the change in times. Supply side factors strongly influence the affordability of houses, and people upgrade and people look to house their children here. It's an important commodity to be able to offer the community. So there is community benefit. So I'm not going to be hamstrung by thinking of 25 years ago, but I am going to be mindful of the planning underpinning about what is good planning, because that hasn't changed. Environmental care, access now for bushfire protection, having an internal road within the subdivision to minimise the crossover access to Biddle Road, one of our major distributor roads, is a vital issue that's been picked up by the officers. And I think they've done a very good job on this one. The planning framework is in place. Local Planning Strategy 2019 is not my opinion, not the officer's opinion, it's the council's decision to maximise the number of lots, appropriately subdivided lots, in the Commonage. That's the council's position, where a whole heap of consultation occurred. And we'll go through that process after the scheme, and then we'll have another scheme after that, and then we'll do another, as best we can resource it, because times are not only changing over a 25-year period, they're changing over a 10-year period or even shorter now. So the world's a complicated place, and it's going to be an interesting time to continue to roll with that development of land and managing it appropriately. So the decision is before us now. We're elected to make that decision. I'm following the council's established position on the local planning strategy. The officers have done a great job. I can't really pick any faults in it, and I'm supporting the officers' recommendation, so I won't be supporting this alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeish. Speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Ryan.
I'll be speaking against this too. Councillors, once again, the 2019 local planning strategy under following strategies relate to population and settlement, 7.2G, support and proactively plan to identify suitable areas for re-subdivision, consolidation of existing rural residential development in both the Commonage and Dunbarton rural residential areas. Councillors, I would suggest to you that consultation has been done. It was done commencing in 2016. So we have genuinely engaged with the community, and it's important that, you know, just because the community don't know about these documents, it's still not a reason to actually vote against the officer's recommendation. So I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Speaker 4? Councillor Lee? No. Speaker against? Councillor Lee?
Thank you. I will be brief and just reiterating what Councillor McNish said. The officer's recommendation is sound and very comprehensive. And I'd just like to refer you to the what number is it? The 12.2.4, the schedule of modifications. The first one, the reason, in response to public submissions and DBCA submission. The second one, the second modification, to align with the requirements of the scheme. The third one, in response to public submissions. So there has been consultation done. The officers have taken that on board, and I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Speaker 4? Speaker against? Councillor Cox, you have, Councillor Love, you spoke. Councillor Cox, you're right.
Thank you.
Your rebuttal.
I find it interesting that a due regard document is regard only and you have to regard relevant factors. Well, to me, the relevant factors of the due regard document are that it states a particular size, minimum and average size of lot that applies to this area. I would have thought that was a very, very, very relevant factor. The outdated commonage policy area structure plan, it's been brought up again, it's outdated. I agree, potentially it is outdated, but I don't know what the wider community and how they are feeling. Do they feel the same as I feel? The officers are saying it's outdated. WAPC is saying it's outdated. Other community telling me it's outdated? I haven't heard that. And I'm not prepared to make a decision until I do. The broader community are looking for more land. Well, very soon they're going to get Dunsborough East with about 5,000 lots in there. So I think we're pretty covered for future land in the Dunsborough area. I think keeping rural residential areas a little bit larger at this point before we consult the community is probably a sensible decision, rather than stating we don't have enough land, knee-jerk reaction, quick, let's chop, chop, chop. Let's talk to the broader community first, which is what we'll do through the draft town planning scheme. The local town planning strategy, 2016, it's 10 years old. Oh, the community were consulted back then. Well, they were consulted 10 years ago, and all it says is that there should be some re-subdivision and consolidation of rural residential land. Now, it hasn't been subdivided yet, so it can't be re-subdivided. We're just subdividing it, and we're not consolidating it, it's being subdivided. So I can see the strategy will be redone in accordance with the scheme, obviously. That makes sense, it all has to align. But I don't know that we can sit here and say, oh, well, the strategy says consolidation, we must go with that, because it's all open to interpretation. At the end of the day, it's all open to discretion and interpretation, how you interpret those words. The officer recommendation is sound. I find it interesting that the officers have supported the smaller lots, and yet in the original draft town planning scheme, the officer put in a figure of 3 hectare average lot size in rural residential areas. So it's actually contrary to what officers wanted to do. I don't know if that's what's still going to go out to public consultation in the scheme, but that's certainly where we started. So officers have said, oh, well, but here, we're okay with 1 hectare, but in the scheme, let's take it out to the community with 3. So the officers are obviously a little bit confused.
Councillor Cox, please take a seat.
Imputing motive, to say the planning officers are obviously confused.
I'll retract the statement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
We get the point.
Stick to the point.
Thank you. I'll just quickly wrap up. Yeah.
Councillor.
Reading submissions is not proper consultation. It gives you an indication of what people in the adjacent area are thinking, and they weren't supportive of this. Proper consultation will occur when the town planning scheme is released for advertising and submissions, and then we will get, and only then, will we get a feel for whether the commonage policy area structure plan is outdated and what is the future aspirations of our community with regard to rural residential land. Therefore, I will be supporting the planning framework that exists, the town planning scheme, the local planning strategy, and the structure plan and the development guide plan. All of those things together result in my alternative. And I'm not hopeful, but I would urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour? That's carried 5-4. That's Councillor Beecroft, Mayor Cronin, Councillor Craig, Councillor Love and Councillor Cox. Against, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Lee, Councillor McNeish and Councillor Kennedy. Therefore, it's carried 5-4. Thank you, councillors. Move on to the next item. 17.1, notice of motion, the CEO new KPI development. Councillor McNeish, do you wish to move your motion? We'll just wait for it to come on screen if I may.
As on the screen, sir.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Love. Is there any opposition? Being no opposition, I put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried 9-0. Thank you. Therefore, the next ordinary council meeting will be on Wednesday, the 9th of April 2025. I now declare the meeting closed at 7:06 and thank the officers, the councillors, directors and the member of the public and our local padre for coming along. Thank you.